Did you know the first ever private prison we built in America was only 40 years ago in 1984? Like if I were to ask you right now, we're having a conversation at dinner, when do you think they built the first ever private prison in America? What would you say? You'd probably say 100 years ago, 80 years ago, only 40 years ago. It was in Texas. Do you know from that moment till today, here's stats for you, here we go. The imprisoned population increased from 1984 till today, 194%, while the country's overall population has increased by only 36%. What? And then I go up and I look at more data. Oh, we got a lot of stuff to talk about private prisons today. U.S. population is only 4% of the world's total population. However, you ready? We have 20% of the world's prisoners. How? We have 330 million people in population. China's got 1.5 billion, but we have the same amount of people in jail. And by the way, India's got 1.4 billion people, give or take, total population. We got 340, and India's only got 573,000, and we have 1.76 million. How's that even possible? And then this guy, Ice Cube, I had him on the podcast yesterday. He's on Bill Maher, and he's saying, Bill Maher, the same people that own the record labels also own the private prisons. Who's he talking about? While he was on the podcast here, he said BlackRock. Do you know what are the two biggest private prisons in America? One of them is called Geo Group, right? Do you know who's the biggest shareholder, institutional shareholder of Geo Group? You ready? Number one, you can find this for yourself, BlackRock. They own roughly 14.16%. You know what number two is? It's called Vanguard. You know what they own? 9.96%. And by the way, the other one is called Core Civic Incorporated. Ready? Number one, biggest top institutional holder. Public information, BlackRock, 16.75%. Number two is Vanguard, 11.17%. You know what they like? They like the investment. It's a great business model. Let's get more people. If you own restaurants, what do you want? More customers. If you own hospitals, what do you want? More sick people. If you own a private prison, what do you need? We need more people to go to jail. Come on, baby. That's the business model. One time I sat down with a divorce lawyer. I said, so what is your business model? Your job is to make sure there's more divorces, more divorce. Can you imagine that's what you do for a living? So anyways, we sat here, we were curious. We said, you know what? What caused this spike in private prisons? And which state costs the most? Every one of these, data that maybe you're gonna be like, Pat's a little bit too much. We wanna learn all about it. We're gonna talk about it today. Okay, so if you get value out of this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Let's get right into it. First thing I wanna do is I wanna see what percentage of people are in private prisons versus public prisons. Because a lot of times you're gonna be like, well, most of the people that are in jail are in private prisons. And that's why we have so many inmates. But the numbers don't prove that the more we looked into it. Matter of fact, take a look at this chart here. This one says how many people are locked up in the U.S. If you look at state prisons to the green left, state prisons 1,071,000, local jails 550,000, federal prison and jails 208, and you got a few others in there, youth, immigration detention, involuntary commitment, et cetera, et cetera. That's a breakdown of our prisons. And then we said, but we want to know a little bit more. What percentage of inmates are in private prisons? You see what the number is? According to Prison Policy Institute, only 8% of confined people are held in private prisons. That means 92% is still public, government, state, federal owned. Mass incarceration is driven by government policy and spending, but the private companies that contract for less than 8% of all cells get a disproportionate share of attention. Why is that? So if I look at this, I would think, public is like, no, it's not us. We're the state, we're federal, we're the good people. We would not imprison this many people. It's the rich corporate guys. Look at those guys. No, U.S. government, state and federal, you got 92% of the inmates. Private is only 8%. Yes, they have a business model. We can take shots at BlackRock, Vanguard, all those guys. They only got 8% of it. But let's continue. When did the spike really happen? Well, when we look at the prison system, and if you look at this chart with the number of people and inmates, it's from 1950 to 2016. So you would notice the same as 1950 as 1970. But if you go to 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, and then boom, we go from 200,000 inmates to 1.6 million. How? Why? What happened during that time? Don't you want to know? I'm curious. There was something that happened called the War on Drugs, June 17, 1971. The crime and punishment on certain things you did with drugs, crack, all this stuff went complete different level. People went to jail. Was that a business model? Was there incentive for it? Matter of fact, let's take a look at the population growth from the same exact period from 1950 to today. If you look at that chart with the blue line going up, we're growing every year, right? But if you look at the previous system, the numbers that we looked at inmates, so our population's grown like this. inmates going like this, and then all of a sudden, inmates goes like this, right? And surpasses it. What was the purpose of war on drugs? Was it a business idea? Or was it really about keeping people safe? Was it really targeting a certain community audience? I don't know. Let's take a look at it. So now, while we're talking Nixon as well, the whole war on drugs, we have to keep in mind that this was about putting a hard line when it comes down to drugs.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse.
Even Governor Nelson Rockefeller from New York followed the same pattern as Nixon for drug pushing, life sentence, no parole, no probation. His policies ensured 15 years to life in prison for drug users and dealers, creating the growth of a massive correction system that currently houses, this number here says 2.2 million. Now watch this. Most common types of crime: drug trafficking, 65,000. 2, firearms, sexual abuse, robbery, child pornography, immigration, fraud, theft, embezzlement, murder, money laundering, assault. But look at drug trafficking. Drug trafficking alone is more than all the other combined. So it makes me think, right? Earlier we talked about hospitals, you need sick people. Restaurants, you need people to come in and buy. You want them to keep coming back. What is the financial incentive to put people in jail? Let's kind of go through it. Number one, private prisons. Revenue generation. Private prison companies earn money based on number of inmates they house. Contracts with government agencies often include per diem rates for each prisoner. So more prisoners, government pays you more. Kind of an interesting model. Creating a direct financial incentive to maintain or increase inmates' population. Expansion. By lobbying for laws that lead to higher incarceration rates, private prisons can secure more contracts and build more facilities, thus increasing their revenue. Pretty straightforward. More inmates, more money. 2, public sector unions. Job growth and security. More inmates means more jobs for corrections officers and other prison staff. Unions have a vested interest in maintaining high employment levels, which can lead to support for policies that result in more incarceration. Hey, the jail is getting small. I can't lose this $68,000 a year salary that I make from the government. Hey, we got to figure out more people to go to jail. Forget it, make it tougher. Put them in jail. We need more. Do you see how that kind of works? That's kind of weird, right? Number 3, political and economic factors. Political influence. Politicians may support tough on crime policies to appear strong on law and order, which can be potentially advantageous, especially during election cycles. Economical impact. In some regions, prisons are major employers and economic drivers. Local economies may become dependent on the jobs and economic activity generated by prisons, creating a local incentive to support incarceration. Now, by the way, you know who does that? Both sides do this. Now, we were interested in seeing which state is the most cost per inmate. Who do you think is the most? I mean, you got to put it up there, right? New York, number 1, the most competitive on the average annual cost per inmate, $60,000. Number 2, their neighbor Jersey, Connecticut right next to them, Vermont right next to them, Rhode Island. It's as if they're all influencing each other to make it very expensive to be in the Northeast. But you can never forget about California. They take this very seriously. They also want to compete in this area. Then you got California, Washington, Maine, Penn. You can go all the way down. You see who's the cheapest? Kentucky, only $14,000. Indiana, Alabama, Louisiana, Kansas, Oklahoma, Idaho, Florida, okay, makes the bottom 10. Nevada, bottom 10. A lot of red states are in the bottom 10. And for whatever reason, New York, Jersey, I mean, I don't know where they put them. Maybe they put them in like a nice Ritz-Carlton place where some, it's expensive, and they're giving them nice clothes and nice, like, maybe like a golf cart while you're in prison. You're kind of going around from your room to this. Why the hell are you charging $60,000 for this? The same thing Kentucky's doing for 1/4 of the price. Kind of weird. Still, we're curious. We want to learn. You want to learn. So we've got to kind of follow the money to see what's going on here. I mean, this is 2017 numbers, so let's assume it's going to be around $200 billion a year as an industry. If we look at this from the top all the way down, you'll see public correction agencies, prisons, jails, parole, and probation. That's $80.7 billion, right? And then you'll see to the right, public employees. The cost of public employees, $38.4 billion. That's a lot of salaries. By the way, if we just take the average salary of $60,000, okay? $60,000 divided by $38.4 billion, okay? $38.4 billion. Let's see how many $60,000 salaries employees this creates jobs for. Already 640,000 people. So that means even if we got rid of 1/3 of our inmates and we clean house and we change the rules, you're talking about 640,000. You're going to lose 420,000 jobs, 410,000 jobs. How are you going to answer? Even politicians are like, we don't want to lose that 410,000 jobs, right? Continue. Healthcare, $12.3 billion. Construction, $3.3 billion. Interest payments, $1.9. Food, $2.1. Utilities, $1.7. Private correction, $3.9. And look at the profits they make all the way at the bottom. The private prison profits, it's only $374 million. It's not a lot of money if you think about it compared to the other industries. Let's go back to the top. Judicial and legal, criminal law only, $29 billion. Prosecution, $5.8. Indigent defense, $4.5 billion. Policing, criminal law only, $63.2 billion. Civil asset forfeiture, $4.5. Bail fees, $1.4. Cost to families, $2.9. Commissary, $1.6. Telephone calls, $1.3 billion. Give or take, it's a $200 billion a year industry. It's a massive industry. By the way, oil industry, you know how much it is? $500 billion. It's only 2.5 times bigger than our freaking prison system. Oil, when you think about oil, it's, oh my God, oil, all these rich people. It's only 2.5 times the size of the mass incarceration as an industry. Pretty wild to think about. So I mean, when you look at this, you're like, okay, so Pat, what's your, all the problem, what's the solution? How are we going to handle this? A couple different things that we have to look at. Obviously, in 2018, Trump came out with the First Step Act. A lot of people have tried to kind of make some progress in that area. Van Jones was even in the back. He was in tears, emotional.
Something is beautiful is happening.
They're criticizing him. How could you defend Trump? You're a guy that was an Obama guy, right? Because this is progress that's being made, and in here, it's not politics. Couple things. One, punishment must change. A kid can be raised in 3 different families. Okay, in one family, kid does something bad, he gets his iPad taken away from him. For the same thing you do wrong in another family, kid gets hit by a belt. For another kid in a different family, for the same exact thing he did wrong, he gets smacked upside the head and gets spanking by a drunk father that comes home for 10, 15 minutes, and the kid is crying, marks all over the place, right? Same crime, 3 different punishments by the father, okay? You don't have to go all the way here necessarily first time around. I don't even think you need to go here ever. Some states go there. That's all this means. We have to kind of bring the punishment back. 2, the 3 situations all have what in common? There is a father in place in each of these 3 situations we're talking about, right? We have a fatherless epidemic in America since 1964 with Lyndon Johnson that changed the incentives to want women to have more kids without a father being there to say, I don't need a man. We need to go back and bring them together and say, you need him, he needs you, this is how it makes it work, and instead of being 1.6 kids birth rate, let's increase that to 2.1, 2.5, but bring back the right values and principles. Gradually lower the price, the punishment that you have, where people can come back in and incentivize some companies that are maybe bringing inmates and giving them jobs, give them the incentive, the other way around. If you hire in former inmate and you have a program that you allow them and they stay with you for 2 years, so there's pressure on the inmate to want to get back into society as well. If they stay within a company for 3 years, there's an incentive for them, and then the company gets some kind of a tax benefit for giving that employment to them. You can kind of start working on what kind of an incentive can be there. There's plenty of smart people in a room together to come up with what do you think, and then take the research and find out what's best. But definitely the way we're going right now isn't the way to do it. America is better than this. We have way too many smart people to not put them all in the room together and figure out how to solve this. If you got value out of this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed this video, I got another video I want you to watch. If you've never seen the welfare video we did on Lyndon Johnson, what he did with these fatherless homes, if you've never seen a history of it, click here to watch that video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye, bye-bye.